Hey, everybody. Congressman Kurt Schrader here. I'd like to thank everyone who signed up for our small business webinar today. We've had tons of small business owners and nonprofit managers sign up. Hopefully this hour will be very useful for all you guys. I want to give a special thanks to our two main presenters, Jeremy Field, the Small Business Administration Regional Administrator for the Pacific Northwest region, and Robert Campbell with the Small Business Development Center. Jeremy and Robert will be presenting on the small business programs, PPP, the EIDL, EIDLA, and then share a little bit about the Small Business Development Center resources out there for everybody. The last 30 minutes will then be reserved for questions that you guys have submitted online. We'll be answering the most frequently asked questions that were submitted last week to be most efficient here with our time. We are currently live streaming on Facebook, and they'll be posting a link to watch the entirety of the webinar on my official website at schrader.house.gov. And hopefully, if you guys have other questions, make sure you contact us. Look at our small business resource development page. We'll post a lot of information as we get it. Frankly, there are going to be more questions than answers to start with. These programs have rolled out in light speed at this point in time. And I think a lot of the administrative agencies are catching up, trying to write the rules of engagement so that you guys can apply. Some of these programs, as you're going to hear from our presenters, are more ready to go than others. Others will be coming on over the next several weeks. I and they would appreciate your feedback as to how they're going. So please call me at 202-225-5711. That's 202-225-5711. That's my DC phone number, and you'll be connected with somebody that can hopefully help you. This is a really, really tough time for the small business community, and I don't know if many people fully appreciate the sacrifices you guys are making, how tenuous you are. I mean, I was in small business for 30 plus years, and frankly, I was mostly paycheck to paycheck. I could not afford to shut down for more than a couple months, and even then that was a stretch. So if we can be of any particular help to you, please let us know. So let's turn it over to our presenters. I don't know which one is going to go first, but let's begin the program.
Congressman, did you want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
I appreciate it. So for all the small businesses out there, you've been, I just need to use a metaphor to start this off. The SBA has always been there to help businesses to start, grow, expand to new markets, and recover when a disaster strikes. And not a lot of people knew that the SBA was there to help in a crisis, but now everybody knows. And let me tell you, the SBA is really good at what it does. I think of it as a dependable tugboat, helping small businesses get out to the channels so that they can, take off. And because we're a tugboat, we've experienced some difficulties. Congress has passed some amazing legislation to help us help small businesses. And the demand is not one of a tugboat, it's one of an aircraft carrier. And so we have had to retool the way that we go about helping small businesses. For example, with the disaster loans, when those first came online and the states were able to apply for the EIDL loans, the Economic Injury Disaster Loans is what the acronym stands for. Our website was not, it just wasn't up to the task. It was a tugboat. Typically when our Office of Disaster Assistance goes and helps Puerto Rico or Houston, they're out on the ground. They set up in a place that the community knows is easy to get to, a main thoroughfare, and we have dozens and dozens of ODA and SBA employees on the ground helping people walk through these applications. Because when disaster hit in Puerto Rico, they couldn't apply online on a portal. But the nature of this pandemic makes it it's just a bad idea to get a large group of people together to help them apply for these loans. And it took us 2 weeks to ramp up and really make that a streamlined process. Before, it was taking people, they could spend hours on a disaster loan and not finish it because we just didn't have the infrastructure we need. Now we have the capability, due to a public-private relationship, to process 2,000 disaster loans every second. If you apply for a disaster loan now, we could give a disaster loan to every small business in America within 4 hours. And that's the capability we have. The disaster loan portal is an aircraft carrier. It's what we need for this job. And right now we have been ramping up our PPP loan portal as well. The Paycheck Protection Program, it has a huge demand. You're here because of that huge demand. We are still building that aircraft carrier. As of this weekend, we had, I can't tell you who helped us, but I'll tell you that you would immediately recognize the private entity that has helped us build a new portal so that lenders can really get in there and access all of our tools so they can lend you the money you need through the Paycheck Protection Program. So hopefully this morning, a lot of your lenders are going to be finding it so much easier to get into our systems so that they can get in there and loan you the money you need. Your lenders have a lot of questions for us, not just with the policy changes that we've made and the regs that we've updated and clarified, but just getting on this portal and making sure that they have access to it. That's been an issue on Friday when we opened up. There was just so many institutions. At first, we only had 4 institutions that were able to loan. By the end of the day, we had almost 900. Over the weekend, we've added more. And as of this morning, we have a new portal that's open, and it should give those lenders a lot more ability to get you the access that you need. So let me tell you a few other updates, and maybe I can just answer some of the most frequently asked questions that we have. Is that all right if I do that, Congressman?
Computer going. Yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be fine.
Okay, that's great. So it says here, one of the questions we get a lot is, I'm a sole proprietor. I apply. Can both an LLC and an S Corp apply? And the answer to that question is yes. All these businesses can apply now. Independent contractors and self-employed individuals can start applying for the PPP program April 10th. Another question comes from nonprofits. Can nonprofits apply? Can churches apply? And also, so the answer to that is yes. Including a 501c19, a veterans organization can apply for a PPP. We've made clarifications as of this weekend to say that faith-based organizations are eligible to receive SBA loans regardless of whether they provide a secular service. They will be, that says that no otherwise eligible organization will be disqualified. So you don't have to worry if you're a religious organization, you can still apply for these PPP loans to help you get through this period. Now, there's another question about ag business. And of course, this is very important. I come from a long tradition of farmers. And so I have cousins and uncles that have been asking me this question. So it says, what types of ag businesses can apply? And the answer to that is wineries were specifically mentioned, and wine growers from the questions that the congressman received. And since the PPP falls under the 7A program, then the same applications apply, which means both of these business examples that were given to me of the wine growers and vegetable direct markets would qualify for a small business for the PPP program. You cap out at $100,000 per employee or business owner. That's how much money you can, at the top end, you can pay someone during the 8-week period that the PPP goes for. The payroll costs are capped because, on the high end, we can go $10 million. When you receive a PPP loan, that means that you can apply for up to $10 million if your needs meet that. And 75% of the loan that you get from the PPP has to go to payroll. The rest can go to paying for your mortgage or lease. It can go to paying for utilities so that you can keep your bills paid, keep your employees' benefits and paychecks coming. And then we're all able to weather this crisis better. The whole point of the PPP is to help people get the money they need to hunker down. And so we lower that bell curve that we're all watching on the news so that we don't flood our healthcare services. So this PP program, it's a social safety net. That's what it is. We've asked that banks and small businesses be the engines that crank out the social safety net, and that's a whole new way to do things. But the neat part of the PPP is that it keeps business as usual for your employees. They have their same paycheck. They have their healthcare benefits, and I think that's just psychologically going to be so much better as we go through this crisis. Another question we had, is there a limited amount of money allocated by Congress that will run out? And the answer to that is the CARE Act contains $376 billion in relief for Americans and small businesses. $349 billion of that is for the Paycheck Protection Program. So and compare that to the economic injury disaster loans. That's a pool of $10 billion at this time. So the CARES Act provides a lot of funds, and we'll be getting those out as fast as we can. Now, who determines whether a loan is forgivable? Is it a financial institution? Will there be an avenue to challenge if it's determined not forgivable? And so this is what the answer to that question is. The loan amounts will be forgiven as long as it is used for payroll costs, mortgage interest, rent, utility costs over an 8-week period after the loan is made. And you have to maintain your employee levels that you had when this crisis hit. We want you to, if you've let them go to apply for unemployment insurance, or because they weren't showing up because they had a concern about a family member, or just being in an at-risk pool themselves, hire those people back, get them the payroll that they need. This isn't about performance. This is about support. The PPP is there to support all Americans in private business. So get those people online. If they haven't gotten another job, if they're just waiting for uninsurance, get them back online just like normal so we can take care of our citizens. Now, it's also a question it has here is, does an equipment lease payment qualify as lease payment, or define lease payment? So based on the definitions, it does not appear equipment leases qualify for PPP. You can use an idle loan, and that would be a better fit for that program. The language for PPP says it can be used for payroll costs, again, mortgage obligations incurred before February 15th, rent under lease agreements enforced before February 15th, and utilities for services that began before February 15th. So you can use those funds to pay for backdated expenses. For health clinics, can these funds be used to purchase medical equipment, devices to keep providing care? And it says, since the PPP doesn't include any of this in the language, the idle may be a better fit. So again, those idle loans are there. Basically, the rule is this: do you need money for payroll and to keep your lights on and to pay your mortgage or lease? Then you want the PPP. If you need it for anything else, go with a disaster loan. Go for an idle loan. Can this loan, the PPP, be used to pay employees who are at home due to social distancing guidelines, i.e. pay them if they don't come to work? And the answer is yes. I answered that a little earlier, but absolutely the answer is yes. We want people to stay home. We want them to maintain a safe social distance so that we lower the bell curve. That's what this is about. And it says, it's worth noting, though, that the CARES Act expressly excludes qualified sick and family leave wages, for which a credit is allowed under Section 7001 and 7003 for the Families First Corona Response Act. So, ask your lender, call us at the SBA, call the Small Business Development Centers, our Women's Business Centers, our SCORE chapters. We can all walk you through that. If you feel like your employees qualify under a different program because they meet this definition under the Family Leave Act, then there's a different pool for them if they weren't able to come because they got COVID. All right, so another frequently asked question we have here is, how will the full-time employees be calculated before and after? And it says here that there's a sample calculation in the standard operating procedures on the SBA website. Plus, your lender can help out with this. Essentially, you just estimated what the employee would have made during this time. This includes tips. So yeah, if you have someone who's, it's tips or they're mostly commission based, just go back in time, see what their past performance has been, average that out for, what their salary would be for over a year and pay them that salary for the 2 months. That's what you do. So, let's see here. And there was one other question here about if you had multiple commercial properties, but few employees, can the PPP be used to pay those mortgages? So if you are one of those people that have multiple commercial properties, the answer is yes, you can apply for the PPP. You can pay interest on the mortgage obligations incurred before February 15th, the rent under lease agreements enforced before February 15th, and utilities for which service began before February 15th. So with that, we've covered all the questions that you guys had sent in to the congressman beforehand. If there are any other questions, myself and my district director, Marty Golden, are here, and we'd be happy to, if we can't answer them today, we'll track down the answer for you. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the congressman.
Thanks, Jeremy. That was pretty thorough. Made a few notes myself, probably ask a few questions myself at the end here, and encourage everybody else to make sure they come back and chat with us again a little bit later on. So appreciate it very, very much. Let's go to Robert here. Hear what opportunities are for the small business development centers. Sounds like you guys are going to be an integral part of this.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. Good job, Jeremy. Very inclusive. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here. My name's Rob Campbell, and I am the director of the Clackamas Small Business Development Center at Clackamas Community College. Our campus is located about a quarter of a mile west of Clackamas Town Center, if you're familiar with that. And I just want to cover a little bit about resources that are available to everybody. If you're not familiar with the SBDC network, Small Business Development Center network, the SBDCs were started in 1983 after the depression that we had in the early 80s because small business got just annihilated. 18% interest rates, double-digit inflation, and there wasn't any program like what we're talking about today available. So there's 63 SBDC networks around the states, in the United States and territories. In Oregon, there's 19 SBDC centers, and we have over 140 business advisors available. We're in 42 different locations. My particular center serves about 1,200 clients a year. About half of them want to start a business, half of them have an existing business. And so, like everybody, we have been getting up to speed on the new SBA programs that are in effect right now. So we're busy training the trainer and getting people up to speed. We do have a process in place to help people when they have questions. And one of the things that we do at the SBDCs is that we have what we call programs to help people actually learn how to run a business, to start a business, to grow a business, and to thrive in that business. And these programs include classes, workshops, and events to give people content. There's kind of a learning ladder that we all go through. We don't know what we don't know. It's called ignorant bliss, and it's a great place to be if you can stay there, but generally you can't. So the next level is you know that you don't know. And that's when you want to get some content, what we call content. We do that in a training event, like a class or workshop or event. And so people need to know what the options are, what they're available. And then we offer at no cost, confidential, one-on-one business advising to take that content that people get and put it into context for their specific business. And that's our model, and that's we did at my particular center, we did over 1,300 hours of that one-on-one business advising. I would like to show you where when we get inquiries, and we're getting hundreds and hundreds of inquiries about this program and how that how these programs fit within their respective business. So our first response is to have people get some content. And so I want to share my screen and I want to show you where we send people. And see if get this out. Hope everybody can see that. If you go to bizcenter.org, bizcenter.org, there's a page here. And this is on all of our 19 SBDCs. If you scroll down here, I will show you a list of, there they are. There's where the 19 SBDCs throughout the state are located. 17 of the centers are affiliated with community colleges, 2 of them with universities. And that you'll see over here are services. Each one of the centers serve the small business community within their geographic area. But there's a lot of centralized services that we rely on. And those are listed under our services. And the top left here, I'll put my cursor over that, is called the Capital Access Team. So our first response when people call us is said, please go to bizcenter.org, go to the COVID-19 business resource page, and you will find a list of resources. And at the very top, obviously, the SBDC network is partnered with the Small Business Administration and Business Oregon and our local county resources. So we've been partners since the SBDC network was originated in 1983. So SBA funding options and then option comparison. So we want people to get on the SBA website and look at the economic injury disaster loan and that criteria and the Paycheck Protection Program loan, and see if they can pre-qualify which one would actually fit their needs the best. There's also there's lots of other programs that are listed on the SBA website. There's an express bridge loan for up to $25,000. There's debt relief. We've had clients, the work share program is provided by our employment department here in Oregon. It pays 40% of people's wages. If you've got a business that's not shut down completely and you have some business and you have to keep employees going, oftentimes this work share program, I've had several clients just this last week get their employees signed up under that. And then they would apply for the PPPL program through the SBA. And as Jeremy said, the whole intent of all of this is to keep our people, keep the cash flow going, just so people can get paid and you can pay your mortgage and your utilities, and that's what we need. There's a guide to navigating a business crisis on here. We put this together to help people. There's kind of a checklist of what we recommend you do: cash management and pricing, cost containment, supply chain management, and marketing. We tell our clients, you've got to communicate with everybody that's affiliated with your business model. So it's not only your clients, but you need to communicate, make sure your employees are safe, they need to understand what's going on. All of your vendors and suppliers, you need to talk to them. And of course, you need to talk to your local banks. If you have a relationship with your bank, that should be like one of your first calls, and make sure that. So anyway, here's a nice little checklist. So we have these resources available. And so when people do call us, we send them to Biz Center. They try to pre-qualify themselves. They get back. We will make a appointment with one of our business advisors, and we think that we can handle the vast majority of those. The people that have more sophisticated financing and business structure needs, we are actually going to refer those people to the Capital Access Team. And the Capital Access Team, like I said, is a centralized service that provides financial services, in education and information to the 19 SBDC centers. So they will be the experts on how to utilize this. So with that, I think think I've covered everything that was on the agenda, Congressman Shader.
Hey, great.
Unmute.
Sounds good. Sounds good, guys. Hopefully you can hear me at this point in time. Where this is all new for us, too.
Congressman,
Yeah,
this is
Marty,
Marty,
go ahead.
District Director for the SBA. I'm wondering if your constituents would like to get a little bit of an overview of the PPP and EIDL programs, or should we just wait for questions?
No, let's do that right off the bat, Marty. I mean, we're making some assumptions here because so many people have asked some very in-depth questions, but there's still probably, and I don't know about everybody else, but as a small business owner, I don't mind hearing the same thing again and again to see if I hear the same thing again and again. And if there's some discrepancies, helps me ask better questions. So why don't you line it out? And particularly, can they access, one of the big questions get all the time is, can we access both the EIDL program, the disaster program, and the PPP? And some business, yes, some business, maybe not so much.
Yeah. So again, this is Marty Gold, PA. Jeremy was asking questions that have come up over time on the PPP program, but I don't want to forget about the EIDL program. That's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That is a program that runs through the SBA's disaster office. So whereas the PPP program is going to be run through banks and people will apply for the PPP program through the banks, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan will run through the SBA's website and will be funded by the SBA through the Treasury. And so the EIDL program was the one that came out first and got a lot of press before the PPP was rolled out. That's a program where it's a loan for up to $2 million. And it's a loan that is a very long-term loan. The interest rate is 3.75%, but the terms are going to be either 15 or 30 years. So the EIDL program is used for a broader set of expenses for your company than the PPP is used for. The PPP is primarily payroll, interest on debt, and rent, and also I'm forgetting one thing. Jeremy, if you want to kick in there, but I'm forgetting one thing there. And then the EIDL program.
Utilities.
Utilities, thank you. I should just think of Monopoly. But the EIDL loan is used for a broader set of things, such as accounts payable and other fixed expenses of the business. And so you can apply for this online. There's a really slick portal now. It's if you go to sba.gov/disaster and apply for assistance, it'll take you to an online application. That won't take you more than 20 or 30 minutes. And the other thing that it comes with now is the possibility of an advance loan that is forgivable. So depending on the number of employees you have on payroll before the crisis started, you can receive up to $1,000 per employee in a very fast period of time. I think once the system gets up and running well, that'd be 3 days. And so whether you take the actual EIDL loan or not, if you don't take the EIDL loan or if you turn down for the EIDL loan, whatever money is advanced to you will be forgivable. There's no personal guarantee on the EIDL loan as long as it's less than $200,000. And not-for-profits can take advantage of that too, including 501c6s, which are chambers of commerce. Again, that one runs through the SBA's own disaster portal. The PPP program, which just discussed earlier, is up to $10 million. That's a shorter term loan. It's a 2-year loan. It carries an interest rate of 1% now, 1%. It doesn't require any collateral, doesn't require any personal guarantee. The EIDL loan, which I was talking about a second ago, does require collateral over $25,000. But again, no personal guarantee unless it's over $200,000, which is really a great thing. All SBA loans in normal times require guarantees, so this is a big deal. The PPP loans are going to be guaranteed by the SBA 100%, and again, they run through banks. So all banks right now, or not all banks, but many banks who are existing 7A lenders are already taking applications. Other banks who are not yet SBA 7A lenders are going to be applying through an expedited process. There's been a lot of interest in this throughout the throughout the rest of the country for new banks coming in. It's going to take us a few days to get on top of that, but I expect that a lot of banks, if they're interested in making those loans, will be making those available to customers right away. So I would get out there and start talking with banks, and then checking to see what makes sense for your business. You can use both the EIDL loan and the PPP. So I'll give you an example. If you have a payroll that you want to protect, then you could try the PPP program. Use those funds for payroll and utilities and interest and rent. And then if you want to make accounts payable payments, you can go back and use the EIDL program. The only caveat is you can't use both programs for the same set of expenses. So that's the thing to keep in mind. And so again, one program, the PPP program, it's likely that a lot of the money you take out into that will be forgivable. Under the EIDL program, up to $10,000 will be forgivable. The rest of the debt will be rolled out in a very long-term note. There's no penalty prepay either of these deals. There's no upfront fees of any kind. There's no servicing fees. They're very clean from that perspective. So I look forward to questions, and Jeremy can answer those as well. Thanks very much.
Very good. Very good. Thanks, Marty. I appreciate it very, very much. Very, very much. One of the other questions that has come up from a lot of folks is, what about the rest of agriculture? There's only a few, as Jeremy alluded to, that were allowed to apply for the PPP program. And there are a lot of other small family-owned agricultural businesses and farms in the Willamette Valley that would like to access these. We've talked, I'll say I know I have talked with our leadership, and there's discussion about a CARES 2 package supplemental. In other words, based on the feedback we're getting from folks, we've realized there's some holes in the original CARES package that we passed a week and a half ago, and want to fix that. And so I think there's a strong likelihood that we might expand the PPP program to bulk of smaller agriculture that would fit under the same guidelines that our small businesses would. I guess historically, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, historically SBA just doesn't or hasn't had the ability to lend to agriculture. The rules kind of forbid it. Am I correct in that?
You're correct. Typically, we've referred those kind of businesses with USDA Rural Development, which is an incredible agency, for lending purposes for rural counties. So, yeah, that is kind of a gap. There's a lot of questions we still have, but never be afraid to ask your lenders or call the Small Business Development Center or the SBA if you have a question that you might fit in the rules that we have. Don't be afraid to ask, and we'll track down the answers. But yeah, USDA Rural Development is the typical lender for agricultural based businesses.
Yeah, I'd like to chip in here a little bit. I know a part of the $2 trillion package of a large chunk of it went to the USDA. Got to keep our farmers going here, whether they're big ones or whether they're small ones. And I don't have the specifics on the programs that you're talking about, Kurt, but I do know that there is a lot available. We have one program, as you know, we have about 15,000 businesses in Clackamas County. We have about 3,000 small farmer raiser growers in the county. And, when you and I were involved in the One Stop, this Oregon Solutions program a few years ago, we made a commitment to do a succession planning program for those 3,000 small farmers. 2,000 of them are 60 years old and older. So I do have a person on staff that is actually knows the ag space extremely well, because she's been the person that's actually taught the curriculum and does the one-on-one business advising. So if you do have any of the farmers that like Jeremy's talking about, you can have them contact the Clackamas SBDC and we'll take care of them.
And I'll also point out for a lot of our small farmers out there that they should go ahead and feel free to check with the Rural Development Program. They got a lot of money in this also, trying to beef them up a little bit, make sure they have the opportunity to supply the needs that the current PPP program does not allow them. One of the other questions that's come up a lot we received is, what if you're basically a sole proprietor or one employee only? It's your business, or you and your wife. I mean, that's common. There are a lot of small businesses out there that are very, very small businesses. Are they eligible for either of these programs?
Yes, absolutely. The sole proprietors are able to apply on April 10th for those programs. But yeah, the answer is yes.
Well, that's good. That's good news, I think, for a lot of folks out there trying to figure out, with my small business, can I actually qualify? And another question that's come up is, some banks have said they're not going to participate, supposedly. We'll fact check that, but say a Wells Fargo or somebody says they don't want to participate in the program. How does a person who's got a loan with them, or that's been their relationship, how do they go about applying for the PPP since their lender's no longer participating or does not want to participate? Have we had that occur yet, you guys?
Yeah, and before I answer that one, can I just go back? If you're a sole proprietor or an LLC or an S corp, I just want to repeat that all businesses can apply now. Independent contractors and self-employed individuals can start applying April 10th. So as long as if you fit outside of self-employed individuals or independent contractors, you can apply now. And so, but Marty, did you want to weigh in on this next question?
Sure. Yeah, we're still figuring out which banks are going to play and which ones are willing to do the PPPs with their customers and which one are willing to do them with non-existing customers. It's just something the banks are trying to work out right now. Some banks want to do them but can't get into the system yet. So it's going to shake out. But in general, we're trying to, as we get information on banks that are doing it, then we're going to be making lists. But in the meantime, I think it would make sense if your Bank of America is not interested, and walk across the street and go to Umpqua, and it's just going to be a little bit about dialing for dollars there for the time being.
Yeah, a lot of this is being rolled out as we speak. I know historically when we were in the midst of the Great Recession, and we were trying to deal with the financial institutions, shore them up, try not to get them to fail so that we would survive that particular crisis. That I came home shortly after we worked on the Dodd-Frank bill, and not perfect, but certainly, as we can see right now, has shored up a lot of the institutions that would have gone under in this type of situation if it was not for that piece of legislation. But it took them almost 6 months, frankly, to understand the rules of the road, get the rules of the road from Treasury and the banking organizations out there that support the banks. I will also point out credit unions play in this. So if you're traditionally working with a lender that's a credit union, feel free to reach out to them also. I know in conference calls I've had with Secretary Mnuchin at the Treasury and others, they're busy trying to get this set up, get banks comfortable and familiar with these programs. And hopefully, I guess the rough timeline is within a week or two. So while you will be applying for these programs, and don't get too frustrated, it's going to take a week or two at least for them to get set up to be able to receive your applications and understanding what's going on. I guess that's my impression from what I've heard so far. I'd ask Jeremy or Marty if they've heard anything different.
Go ahead, Marty.
No, I was going to say, yeah, they're working frantically to bring in banks. The banks that are already 7A lenders should be good to go. So the banks that already were doing SBA loans, and there's a lot of those in Oregon. So they're already making, I wouldn't say the money's out yet, but they are accepting applications and working through the process.
And the new portal that, and I still need to verify, but that was supposed to have come online today, will be a process that will make it a lot easier for banks that have not applied for a guaranteed loan status before. It's supposed to streamline it like we did for the disaster loans. But if you go online right now for a disaster loan at that portal, you can get approved in 5 minutes. And that's the kind of stuff those are the efficiencies we're trying to bring to our lenders as they are working with our systems so that they can get these monies to the small businesses.
And just to piggyback off of what Jeremy's saying, keep trying, because the first people that applied for the economic injury disaster loans under the old portal had horror stories. There were people that got through. We have thousands of loans that have been made there, but there was many people who couldn't get through, who crashed, who called 800 lines and could never get through, or it took 5 hours. But we're flying in real time here and now. Those 800 numbers, while not instant, are much faster. And we have this new portal, online portal for the EIDL loan, which I've not heard anything bad about from anybody. So we're getting better quickly.
So if I could just recap for everyone out there, and you guys correct me, we had some problems with the economic injury disaster loans, the EIDL loans. Originally, overwhelmed the system, which happens in a lot of crises. You can bring down any system if there's more calls, more traffic than it's designed to handle. You guys have retooled that with the help of probably one of our assistant organizations in the Great Northwest to revise that portal. And so for the economic injury disaster loans, those come directly from SBA. SBA is ready to process those. If you apply now, you will, hopefully over the next couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, receive at least your $10,000 if that's what you apply for. That is totally forgivable. You should apply for that. I think it'd be foolish as a small business organization not to at least apply for that, since it does not cost you anything potentially at the end of the day. If you want a bigger disaster injury loan, then there's going to have to jump through some of the hoops that Jeremy and Marty talked about. Is that an accurate reflection?
Yes, it is. I'd just like to clarify the advance on the EIDL is up to 10,000 and based on up to 1,000 per employee.
Right. Very good. The PPP program is the one that's going to be slower to roll out because we're having trouble getting the rules written and or signing up the banks and credit unions at this point in time. I see lots of banks, a lot of credit unions that do want to participate. We've heard great stories about them stepping up, even without any government program, to delay payments, forbear interest, do a variety of different things for their constituents, if you will. And hopefully when this program gets up and going, it'll be even better yet, and folks will hopefully have a little clearer path. What I'd like to have from folks that are online here, submitting questions and listening, some feedback from you guys. If within a week you're still having trouble getting certainly your EIDL loan, that would be interesting. That should not be happening. And I'd like to know that within a week or so, we've got some banks that are thinking about getting online. If not, then I can talk to my leadership in Washington, D.C. and talk to the Secretary of Treasury and let these folks know what's actually going on at this point in time. Another question that's come up is how is the FTE going to be calculated? Again, the PPP thing, if I'm a small business person, I'm thinking, well, that's a little risky because what if all my employees don't come back on? You guys alluded to the fact that some have left, some take unemployment, some find other jobs. So even though I want to get that 100% forgiven, is it all or nothing? Or if I can get maybe 75% of my employees back, or I keep 75% of my employees, is a portion of that amount that I've got forgivable at the very least, and then the balance I would pay for at that low interest loan. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the fraction of people that you brought back as your employees will determine how much of that loan is forgivable by that percentage. So that's
If I can go back to the nonprofit piece, we've had several nonprofit and churches call in. One of the beauties I thought of this program was that it made sure that nonprofits, at least some nonprofits, were included, and that different churches could be included too. What portion of their activities could they cover with an EIDL loan or a PPP program?
Well, like Marty said earlier, those religious organizations would want to make sure that they, whatever they use the disaster loan for or the PPP money for, it was separate. But right now, it's just like the business.
So I guess that where I was going with that. So where I was going with that is, what if you've got a school on church property and parents are no longer coming in? The kids are supposed to stay home. They probably are not going to be collecting tuition. Is that sort of expense covered under one of the programs?
Well, I think that'd be covered. Marty, what do you think? I'm thinking probably disaster loan for the tuition that's coming in. It's a lost revenue. But if you need to pay your teachers, that's something you could use the PPP loan for. So
yeah, we don't have guidance that's that specific, but if you sort of think through it as Jeremy did, it makes sense that you could use the PPP to pay the teachers, and then other expenses the EIDL could be used for. But the PPP is going to be used for 501c3s and religious organizations, and then the EIDL can be used for all private not-for-profits. But I think those would fall under both. So yeah, I think you would just try to use the EIDL for expenses that you couldn't use the PPP for.
Okay. Well, and I'll ask that question. It sounds like there's a little bit of a gray area, so I will ask that question more specifically as we get into trying to figure out where the holes in the program that we need to fix. One of the others was that while 501c3s are covered under both programs, there appears to be that 501c6s and C5s are not. And I would assume that's, again, a bit of an oversight. Do you guys have any extra intel in that?
I don't. There are issues right now with the regs that we've cranked out. We're hearing about people that are being excluded, that congressmen didn't want to be excluded, but just the way the law was written and what we received, we can only interpret what we received. So yeah, I think in the next package that you have mentioned, and that many, I've been on a lot of these congressional calls, and everyone has mentioned that they're already looking forward to see where they need to, where gaps have occurred in the legislation and how those can be corrected.
Yeah, I know I heard the Speaker of the House, I think it was on Friday, talking about what follow-up would be needed. And she already listed a bunch of the things that we've talked about here so far today. Another question that has come in is, does the PPP loan cover any portion of payroll for someone who makes more than $100,000 a year?
Unfortunately, the cap is $100,000 for a salary. So it doesn't. But if your expenses, again, you could use that PPP for a mortgage release on business properties, and if you had other expenses that need to be paid, you could always go for a disaster loan, and those can be up to $2 million.
And the PPP will pay the first $100,000 of that salary.
Correct.
One of the questions that came in is, there a limited amount of money allocated by Congress, and will that run out? Well, there are limited amounts of money. I think the gentleman referred to the $350 billion for the PPP program. I think it's 10 for EIDL. I think the EIDL will have to be reauthorized at a higher level, would be my guess, based on the interest level and the fact that that's probably the go-to program for a lot of folks without having to really crank through the math on the payroll issue. So there'll probably be a little more money coming in a variety of different areas. A lot of it will be guided, obviously, by those that sign up. I don't think there's an appetite to curtail the program purely on a financial basis if there's need out there. We don't want to spend money wantonly, for goodness sakes, but to keep our small businesses going through the next month or two while things are at the worst. I personally, with no pride of authorship or inside information, feel that the great state of Oregon is probably going through the worst of it right now. Good news for our state is a lot of the efforts by everybody out there to be thoughtful about social distancing, when to go shopping, when to get out of the house and go about their business have been done very thoughtfully. And good news being that our peak is going to be apparently much, much less than some of these horror stories you hear in back east. And that's a credit to everybody out there for stepping up and doing their part. And I want to thank everybody, and especially our small businesses, for doing so. But hopefully by doing that, we pass this peak in the next few weeks, and we can have a discussion with the governor and others about how we might want to re-engage. How can we open up some of the businesses that have been shuttered? How can we encourage people to go out with appropriate social distancing and still start to support the economy again? The great state of Oregon functions on income tax. When I was budget chair for, almost 10, 12 years in the state legislature, it was absolutely critical that we had income tax, because without that, we don't have a sales tax. Our state can't supply even the basic services for the most vulnerable, much less any of the business activities or anything else out there. So it's going to be important to be able to really fine tune the spigot here, turning things on and off. I don't want the disease to come back, obviously, in force, but if we can do it thoughtfully, then hopefully we can get the main thing is get you small businessmen and women back on track and not have to deal with these programs for hopefully a very, very, very long period of time. So you guys alluded to it a little bit in your discussion, but we talked a little bit about it in the course of the webinar. I think the most important thing that people are going to be curious about is, how can they check on the status of their own applications? I guess let's talk about the SBA disaster loan ones in particular. I mean, theoretically, the turnaround time should be pretty darn quick. Is there a way, and who should they check with, or how can they check online where the status of their application is?
Well, I'll answer the first part. Is if you've applied, and especially, this is specifically for the people that applied through the streamlined process. Marty and I were on a call this weekend. Apparently, everyone who applied for a disaster loan before we got that streamlined process up online will need to reapply for their disaster loans and their disaster advance. So that is something that we had not anticipated. It was the reason for that is because of the potential for a security hack as we went into that to protect our banks, and apparently we've had over 500 fraudulent claims that have already come in. We have to ask people to reapply for the disaster loan that applied early on and didn't use that streamlined process. What we're being told is that if you have applied for those funds, that as of Tuesday, that's when we're going to have the ability to start paying out on those disaster loans. So, that's that part of the answer. Marty, what thoughts do you have on the rest?
Yeah, so people who have applied for the payroll protection program loans, a forgivable loan, would be checking with their banks, because the applications are going to run through the banks. For people who applied or will apply for the economic injury disaster loan, you can call the 800 number. You'll get in an email. And if not, it's on the SBA's website to check on the status. And so I wouldn't recommend checking on it for a couple days. the way it's going to work on the EIDL under the new portal is as soon as you submit the application, you're going to get a notice that you're going to be given an application number. And so that's how you gain assurance that you've gotten into the system correctly. And so give it a few days. And then if you want to call the 800 number, the 800 number helpline people should have the ability to look your loan up and find out if it's been assigned to somebody and what the status of it is. And that was working pretty chunky in the last couple of weeks, but we're told that's going to get a lot smoother going forward.
What date should we tell people that filed for the EIDL loan, the ones that did it really early? What date did the new portal come into effect?
I believe it was last Sunday, but I think if they haven't already been contacted by a loan officer and they don't have a fair amount of confidence that they're in the process, they should reapply. And the good thing about reapplying is it also gives you access to the potential $10,000 advance.
I noticed that the new portal has that at the very end. Yeah.
And I have tried, and I think you have too, Rob, the new portal. It works well.
It does.
Take long. It works
I've
well.
never seen anything like it, Marty, in my life. I started my business career as a banker, as you know, and I've never seen a program like this economic injury disaster loan ever in my life. There's no loan fees, no appraisals, no. And didn't you mention too that on a 7A loan that traditionally credit scores have been about 650 or so?
Yeah, they're lower now.
They are. I mean, these programs, we're trying to keep the small businesses afloat. And so Congress has given us the flexibility to make adjustments to the loans we normally give out. But I'll just repeat it one more time. When you applied for your disaster loan, if it was hard and clunky, you're going to have to apply again. And that's bad news. And we are so sorry for that. The good news is that when you reapply, you're going to be amazed by how much easier it is the second time around. And it's going to take you 5 or 6 minutes to get through it if you have all your information there. Yeah. Mostly you're just going to be answering a lot of
questions. We had multiple people, Jeremy, apply towards the end of last week, starting like Wednesday. I actually had a class on Thursday, had 22 people in it, and we went through and asked them, and a lot of people had actually used the new portal, and they were just totally impressed.
Well, let's end that on a good note then. That sounds good. We're going to hold you guys to that going forward. But it sounds very good. It sounds much better. And again, I'd remind everyone out there that this, Congress only did this a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and SBA's learning as we go. The banks credit unions are learning as we go, and you guys out there are learning as we go about how to go through the process. So don't feel bad or get upset about the fact you got to reapply. This new EIDL portal sounds so much better. And as we talked about earlier in the program, almost a no-brainer for folks to help themselves stay afloat during this roughest of times. And so if you did get a chance to ask your question, call our office. You can call the local offices both in Clackamas and County and in Marion County. We've got an office in Oregon City and Salem. Or you can call the main office here in Washington, D.C., 202-225-5711. And we'll try and hook you up with our folks and our team that deal with these programs. And, Robert, Marty, and Jeremy, thank you so very much for your words of wisdom and your help. I really appreciate the fact you're out there working really hard to help keep small businesses afloat. It is my single biggest concern right now, besides the virus itself, is how do we keep small businesses alive and their hourly employees? There's a lot of folks that are not going to be able to get another job that easily in some trade. And we're talking about infrastructure here in DC. I think that's great. We're long overdue and doing our infrastructure, having a 21st century infrastructure that can compete with the world and others. But a lot of these folks are losing their jobs that are my small business are not going to be able to jump into the construction industry overnight. So keeping these folks, at their job right now, keeping these small businesses going is really critical. So again, thank you guys very, very much. Love to hear your comments as well as your questions on the program, how we could do things better. Again, thank you guys so very much for for joining us. Really appreciate it, Robert, Marty, Jeremy, and everybody out there. Hang in there. Oregon's doing better, much better than the rest of this country, frankly, and it may seem pretty darn tough, but hopefully we hang in there a little longer. We'll be turning the corner. Thank you all very much. Take care now.